Okay, folks, let's bring the August 8th, 2018 Budget Committee meeting to order with a roll call, please.
Brian Winslow.
Dan McNally.
Tom Chase.
Grace Mattern.
Benny Smith.
John Boudreau.
Hal Prater.
Mike Moore.
Linda Smith.
Susan Austin.
Scott Breyer.
And Ginger Dole. Excused this evening are Bob Young, Brad Hall, Betsy, and Joe McCaffrey. And I'd like to welcome Grace, since this is her first meeting with us, and we can, if anybody doesn't know Grace, this is Grace.
You don't know about the hazing we do.
You
Yes,
just got to
we can
stand
do
up
that.
and tell us no.
Okay, so our first order of business is the minutes.
Motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as written. Any discussion? Any corrections anybody saw? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? D. And down. You be up. You be up.
May I ask permission for Sandy to come up to the table?
You may.
Right here is a good spot.
So I asked Sandy to come tonight if we want to get some in-depth questions. So, but that being said, start off with what I think is some very good news. We had paid some, we had budgeted some money to have actuarial service come in and actually analyze and calculate how much our pension, you know, what's on the books that we would have to pay out in the long term. One of the reasons that the town was always getting like an adverse opinion. And the town, I think, Sandy, if I'm correct, is going to be getting its first unqualified audit opinion.
I believe, yes.
So
what's changed?
we paid some extra money and had all the post-retirement benefits and pension stuff analyzed, and actually was able to document the actual liability.
So
A lot of small towns in New Hampshire get adverse opinions because their long-term liabilities aren't properly reported. When I was at one of the GFOA meetings, I met a couple companies that provide that service, and after talking to them, I thought it was worth paying the additional money to have that service done, and they successfully completed that, and because of that, we should have an unqualified opinion on our financials.
So our auditors had it wrong all this time, or what?
No. We had to pay to have somebody come in and do some analysis, and this person come. It's an ongoing contract. They have to do this every year. What is it, third year? They have to do some extra stuff, kind of like assessing. Every fifth year, they got to come in and do some extra stuff.
It's an actuarial contract, not an auditing contract.
Yeah. So we have auditors, and now we have an actuarial coming.
So the auditors just didn't like us because we didn't have that done?
No.
Well, there's a GASB rule. that's
GASB
supposed
rule
to be
that
done.
says it has to be done, and we never had it done. We didn't pay for it. And then this last year, I put in the budget, the Board of Selectmen, upon my, I asked if they could put money in there to have this actual services done to analyze this.
So we hadn't really proven, we had the money, but we hadn't proved it, I guess is what it comes down to.
No, it's proved now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We've proven it through paying
Does it
extra.
mean we're better or worse off than we thought?
Or better.
It means that our financial statements are fairly stated. Before, if you ever looked at our financial statements, we would get what's called an adverse opinion. That basically says the financial statements do not, because of this undisclosed liability. Truthfully, flat out, it doesn't make a difference. I mean, the town, you know what I'm trying to say? But if you would go out to get a loan or something, a bond, it's easy to get a bond if you have unqualified statements.
Which will be very helpful in the future.
So what did the actuary say, we have enough money or not?
No, it's not money. It's, if you look at the financial statements, GASB, the GASB requires you to be able to have the auditors validate what our long-term liabilities are for, what is it, unaccrued.
Health insurance, if I were to retire, you know, what would my date of death be?
Yeah.
How long would I live to be able to be on the town's insurance? How does that impact the risk pool for the town if I'm 80 and still on it? It's those kinds of things.
We were never
They're not
able,
real numbers.
we were
They're
never
not real
really
numbers.
able to subset, without having this person come in and do this thing for us, we were never able to provide the evidence that that was the real number.
There's those numbers in the sky. But
They're
if,
not in the sky, they're real numbers.
well, I know, but it's not,
The
but it's
balance sheet
nothing-
numbers, they're not budget
But
numbers.
they're not things that we have to address.
I thought you shared that. I was very happy with it.
What other good news do you have for us?
The rest is crap.
Can I ask a basic question?
Sure.
I can't tell what period has been reported on, because it says reported period, but it's the entire year.
Okay, the period is the fiscal year, but we look down at the bottom left-hand corner. And for the town, these numbers are accurate as of 7/27.
So that's where I can tell.
Correct. Yep.
So you don't get a quarterly report, you get a so far this
Well-
year to this date.
We tried getting quarterlies and it was becoming a bit challenging with the schools, so we just decided.
It's just
a
whatever
while
that
ago,
date is, it's
the
whatever it
date
is
that
to
it
that
gets
date.
printed
Yep.
off because it's
Okay.
a running statement.
Thank you.
So we're a little more than halfway through the year. But if you actually look at the salary lines, some of the staffing changes and vacancies have left several of the salary lines. They look like they're not they're below what they normally would be expended because we have some vacancies. Overall, the percent expended is in line with where we should be for this time of year. We did have some unexpected repairs to town hall, the heater, AC, and there was some stuff we had to do with the highway garage and heater, and something we had to do down at the transfer station with the compact that were kind of unexpected repairs. But overall, if you look at the numbers on here, we're right in line with, you know, we're a little over halfway through the year. So we feel very comfortable that we're in a good place. And if you wanted to ask specific questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. If I can't answer them, I ask Sandy to come tonight.
Tom?
I'm mostly interested in the consequences of funding that was, had some controversy to it and/or came through the warrant article process. So one thing that we had talked about at length last year in compiling the budget was a police vehicle purchase, which is on page 10, which, if I'm not mistaken, says that that vehicle has not been purchased and there's $43,000 remaining in the budget.
Yep.
Going to purchase a vehicle,
We haven't purchased it yet.
but you're going to do that sometime between now and the end of the year.
I'm waiting for Sandy, has Glenn come to you at all and made any request to purchase that vehicle? So we're kind of waiting on the department head to approach us with how we handle it.
Okay. I think the other thing I'm curious about is paving, because you just, I think, have finished Janice Pond.
We also, yeah, we finished the paving on Janice Pond, and we did a major section of Sherburne Hill.
So I
And
should
we
go-
actually paid a little extra and had a winter binder put down. So what we were finding was we went with a new paving company this year because some of the roads that were done by the previous company, without mentioning the name of the company, we weren't exactly overly satisfied with the quality of the pavement work. Brought this new company in. So far, I've looked at Sherburne Hill, and the sections that were done this year look really good right now. But the test of time, let's see what they look like after frost season. But like right now, they look really nice.
Same with Janice Pond Road, looks really nice, but come back in a year and see how it does with the weather.
We did
and
do
so
something this year that we didn't do. When we put it out the bid, the person came in and says, look, the bid had a different asphalt requirement, and he strongly suggested that, because one of the things, highway advisory, and I think it's because of the cost, highway advisory committee, we don't go over and top coat we put down one pavement, and a lot of times you would probably get more life out of the road if you went in and put a finish coat on top. So this one said, you know, for a little extra money, we can put what's called winter binder on there. That's going to hold up better than what we were using previously. So I'm kind of not looking forward to winter, but I'm hoping that because we went with that different quality of binder, that hopefully it'll look better next year. I don't know, maybe next year everybody will be like, Scott, this looks like crap. I don't know. But we did do that.
One last question has to do with the Mary Waldron Beach project, which I think has been pretty much completed.
Yep.
Correct? On budget, on time.
We had, to the best of my knowledge, there was some issues with the wall, and that has the company has come down and rectified that.
Okay. Are you planning to put lines at that parking area to
Yes.
indicate where you want people to park?
It's my understanding that the road agent has been contacted. I could. Is the town administrator still there?
I don't know.
I think she would.
Oh, we will. We are painting lines. We haven't gotten to it yet. I believe that the road agent is going to go down there and actually paint the lines. I got an email from the town administrator.
Do you know if they're going to be head-in parking or on an angle parking or?
I'm assuming they're going to be head in.
Tell Charlie I'm going to be checking on it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Other questions? Oh, come on. Nobody has any other questions? Then I'm gonna jump in.
I was going to, after we talked about this, so do you want to go to the warrant articles?
Well, let's get the operating budget done
okay, I'm
first,
sorry.
and then we'll go, rather than bouncing around and whatever. So one of the first things that I picked up on page 4 was that the audit services was $1,000 over, but would I be correct in presuming that that's the additional cost or thereabouts for the actuarial?
No, the actuarial study was budgeted in a different area.
No. It's
Didn't
in
it
there.
have its own line?
The actual aerial fees are in this line. They were expended in 18 because of 2017's billing coming in 18 after the 90 days. We have not had the 18 actuarial services. I'm assuming the bill will come in 19. If not, we'll
So why
overspend
is
this
it over
line.
$1,000?
That $1,000 charge was because we changed tax collectors, and by law, you have to have the cutoff on the
That's
tax
right.
and recommit the taxes.
Right, okay. So that was one question I had. Let's see. Electricity for some of the departments seems like it's been used up really quickly. I'm looking at the town parade buildings, $614 left out of $7,500. Are we billing ahead? What's changed?
When we had a rate hike in January.
Which everybody would have got.
Right, which was not included in this budget, because when we did the budget like September, we didn't have that. And additionally, it's the air conditioners.
Yeah, okay,
It's been so hot this summer that,
right. So do we have a guess? What the average bill is running now?
I don't have a guess, because I lump them when they all come in, but, I can get that number for you. And I can give it to Linda tomorrow.
Just trying to think ahead, that's all. There were a couple of other departments that I found that were quite a bit over as well. And then others way down the library looked like they didn't turn the lights on at all. It's in comparison. I was looking at the police department salary lines on page 9. Oh,
May
I'm
I
sorry.
ask a follow-up on your...
Certainly.
So, Sandy, you mentioned the units here. Is it possible that we're using these also to do the heat pump and warm the buildings too? And
in the winter, it's a supplemental heating source.
yeah, so
For me, it's a main heating source, because this exchange always kicks out. So out here and in there, it's really the main heating source. But they're supplemental in the winter, so yes.
yeah, so it may
January,
help on
February,
the-
March, right.
May
we've
help
been
on the
heating.
oil then, huh? Okay.
Again, I was looking at the police department salaries and noticed that the part-time officer salary line is pretty much gone. Obviously, the full-time officers is quite a bit remaining because we're down a couple of, or at least one full-time officer, as I understand it, that position hasn't been filled. I'm presuming, please correct me if I'm wrong, that the part-timers are picking up the slack?
Yes, and at one point, we were down 3 full-time officers. At one point. So we've got 2 of them filled. We still have 1 vacancy, and all the part-time positions are now full. And the part-timers have been filling in on the shifts. And you still got the other full-timers, don't forget, they're on vacation, that need to take vacations and stuff, so.
Oh, yeah,
we've been eating up
absolutely.
that part-time
No,
line.
I was just...
Double time now, right.
I mean, obviously, there's,
Yep.
in the overall budget, I'm not concerned about it,
Correct.
but line by line and thinking ahead for the fall, or budget season, where there might need to be some adjustments looked at.
Well, hopefully that won't happen if all the positions are full.
So are we advertising for that?
They're full, right? Got
We have one,
in the
we have one
academy?
full-time position open.
Okay. It's not counting the guy that's in the academy? Okay. So still one off.
What else? Fire department.
What page?
Oh, page 10. I have lots of questions about the fire department. Can you explain what the difference is between part-time fire wages and the stipends? I didn't realize that we had part-time firefighters. I thought we had
Part-time ones
4
are the
full.
ones that actually come in and fill in for a shift.
They can be both. They're both. It's one staff, but your part-timers are also stipends. If they work an actual shift for station coverage, they get paid from a part-time line because they are part-time. If they just run call from their truck and they log it, that's a stipend at the end of the year, but they can't get double paid. They're either a shift or a stipend.
Okay.
So when they work a shift, that doesn't go into the point system.
No.
It's not supposed to.
So at the moment, how many full-timers do we have?
3.
We have 3 full-timers. I thought we were supposed to have 4 and had 4 but then I heard someone
And
left
then we just
almost a
hired
year
someone.
ago.
And then we just hired someone. So we had 3.
I believe we just got a recent resignation
We
too.
did. We had 3. We hired 1 and went back to 3.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Tom, go right ahead.
Because I don't have a lot of interaction with the fire department or the police department, I'm happy to say.
Could be good or bad,
The
though.
question is, what do you think of the service that these two departments are providing the town? Are there accidents that are being unattended? Are there people who need emergency assistance who are not getting it, given the staffing and the turnover and so forth? Do you have a sense of that, Scott?
First off, I would defer any police questions to the police commission. It's very clear that the selectmen have very little say over the personnel matters and the functioning of the police department other than budgetary. So I don't think it would be appropriate for me to comment on that. Fire department, don't really want to get into any personnel issues, but I do have some, I'm not saying that, I would prefer to see the fire department, I'll leave it at, I would prefer to see the fire department fully staffed. I'll leave it at that. Ideally, that's what I would like.
A couple of other questions that I had. Again, fire department goes on to page 11. Big one that stuck out to me was maintenance and repair on the building. The fire department, 41,000 had been allotted, but only roughly 5,500 has been spent or encumbered at this point. Do we know what? I'm trying to remember what
We
those
budgeted,
repairs were going to be.
correct me if I'm wrong, Sandy, because I do make mistakes. Isn't that where the exhaust system is budgeted?
Yes.
So we did open bids for the exhaust system. I believe we only got one. Did we get one or two?
I don't know that I wasn't doing the bids, Kate was.
But they came in and it'll be brought up at the next selectmen's meeting, but we asked for clarification because of, which we won't get to the warrant article, but it's clear now the exhaust system is going to be put in at the Ridge Station, but it is also, my understanding is that it's also will be able to be reappropriated to a new facility, depending what that new facility is.
I do recall that.
But the remainder of that money's for the exhaust system.
Okay.
What line item are you looking at?
This is 42211-430. It's the fourth item down from the
Thanks.
top on page 11.
Thanks.
Let me preface my other comments with this. You know, we're more than halfway through the year, and if someone tells me that we need to budget for this because we need this equipment or that thing or whatever, I pretty much expect that it would be purchased fairly soon after the monies have been approved. But I've seen several cases, looking through both budgets, where that doesn't seem to be the case. As an example, 2/3 of the way down on the 680 line, uniforms for the fire department. 4,000 was budgeted, 926 spent so far. The line underneath that for gear, 12,000 budgeted, 2,500 spent. There were other lines regarding the hoses and this and that. Now, I realize that some of that is budgeted for the in case we lose a hose or we have a problem or whatever. Are we budgeting for the in case on those lines, or are they simply not been followed up and purchased yet?
I'm going to defer to Sandy, but I thought there was a need to, why don't you take this because I'm not sure.
Actually, in today's vendor run, I had actually paid some of the bills for Bergeron for uniforms. And the gear, they may order that gear in May or June. We may not get the gear October. So the bill won't be paid.
Right, but
Until-
don't they have to fill out a purchase order?
They're supposed to, but if they don't know how much it's actually going to be until we get the invoice,
Really?
yes. Yes, they're supposed to fill it out.
Look into that because
I
Well,
can't run my business that way.
that doesn't make sense because if I order anything like I order at work,
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
it's not a fire department, but it is the department.
I understand,
I know how much, when we put the order in, I know how much the uniforms and stuff are gonna cost, so that really doesn't
They
make sense.
usually have a good idea, but when they order the gear, I don't usually get the requisition in the system till the invoice comes in for that line.
Is that because it has been brought up here?
I can't answer that stuff. I just know that's what I get on my end. So I'm assuming they don't always have the numbers for the gear. Now, uniforms we do. They put them right in when they order them for Bergeron. I can't answer the question on gear because I know it's special ordered per firefighter. So I don't know why it's not done. And that's the only one that it's not done with, and it's never been done that way, so I don't know why.
Yeah, I just find it really hard to understand why when you're calling to place an order or find out about something, why you don't ask, well, what do you think the cost is gonna be?
Right, and I do know they have to be fitted independently, so they have to go up and get fitted for that, so I don't know. I can't answer that because I'm not on that end of it when it's initiated.
Okay. I don't wanna hog this. Anybody else have questions? Okay. Looking on page 13, which is the highway department. Halfway down, it's line 390 for contracted services.
Yep.
1,500 budgeted, but almost 4,900 spent. Do we know what those contracted services were?
Yep. You know what those are?
Wait a minute, you said yeah. You
Well, I'm assuming, wasn't it, earlier I said that we had to do, is that what they had to pay for some of the heating and stuff work?
Some of it is, yes. When they had to have,
you lucked out.
no, they had to have, what are those things called, condensers?
Yeah,
For that heating unit replaced at the highway
and they
garage.
paid for it out of there.
And then, I think that's the bulk of that one.
As opposed to the heat, oil,
Right, because that's
for the
actually.
recycling building?
It's a contracted service that we have for the maintenance and repair on those, right?
Okay.
That would be contracted services.
Okay. A few of the fuel lines I also saw looked really low. I'm praying that that means that the tanks have already been filled going into winter.
Well, they fill them, top them off periodically, but yes. I haven't had many bills lately.
Well,
so
for
I'm
instance,
assuming-
with the, I presume that this is the recycling building heating bill, there's $265 left on the line. So I was just hoping that that meant that the tank was
Topped off, yes.
topped off. I found that in a few other buildings too, so.
And again, that recycling building may have one of these for heat too, so we'll see how that works out for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and down at the transfer station, that was another one of the electricity deals. $900 left out of 6,300. Trying to figure out why so little was left. And finally, the tipping costs, bottom of page 15. For having worked with the transfer station in past years, I know that if volume goes up, costs go up. But the tipping fees, have we generated that much more? We've had that many more trips, or has the rate gone up?
No, there's more trips, but I can tell you, if you look at the encumbrance line, there's still 12,000 encumbered. If we don't expend that, you're gonna have 4,000 excess. But I would like to point out that we're also paying East Coast Container for tipping for hauling too, because we no longer, our last bill with Lamprey is for July, because we no longer have the truck.
The co-op sold the truck.
So we've had other haulers helping. So we got 2 haulers coming out of that one line.
Okay.
So, yeah, just a little background on that, the co-op, is the co-op even exist anymore?
They sold the truck, how could they be?
I don't think, I
I don't
think they're
think-
gonna disband.
Yeah,
I can't say for sure, but I
Pretty
think
sure it's
they're
gonna
disbanding.
disband. I know that Kate's been going to the meetings, but there was a decision made that they were gonna sell the truck. And they basically, you know, it was everybody at each town at the table gets a vote, and the vote was to kind of get disbanded, and they sold the truck. We didn't incur, fortunately, we didn't incur, I don't think we incurred any additional costs because they pretty much sold it. But we did have to go out and find a vendor to do our hauling.
Correct.
Okay, so that may or may,
Right, that encumbrance that you're looking at is the one actually for Lamprey, which is the one that's disbanding, so it could get absorbed from our other vendor before the year's over. So there's just been a lot of issues with that whole thing this year, so be prepared, it could go over.
so we're still using Lamprey, however.
Only up till the end of July, for parts of it.
And then we're on our own.
And where are we taking the waste?
And they're
We're
only
still going over to Turkey,
Yeah, and they were only
right?
taking, I think the last couple of bills, I only got it for household waste, they weren't taking our furniture and demo. We're having East Coast take that.
I look forward to hearing about how this is getting resolved.
That's up to the selectmen, not finance.
I think I'm all set with the financial statement. Anybody else have any other questions, any follow-ups on the financial statement? Anybody have any questions about the revenue sheets? I know Mr. Ruth was very big on the revenue sheet, as was other former budget committee members in the past.
He is not a former budget committee member because he's a current school board member.
Right, he filled the vacancy that the school board had when, so, yes, that's right. Okay, Narrows Fire Station. We need an update.
Sure. I have an update. We put it out to bid. First, put it out to bid. The town, based on information received from the fire chief, he informed the selectmen that he anticipated that he could build that addition for $200,000. So we requested, as a board of selectmen, we requested $200,000 based on a recommendation of the fire chief. I'm not gonna say it was totally the fire chief. I think they had a committee down there and they came up. But I think there's a disconnect down there, and I'm not saying, but I think they were on the assumption that they could use volunteers to build the station, which I don't know any municipalities in the state that do that anymore. They usually go out, sealed bid, and the person that comes back with the best design and best cost is usually the one that gets picked. So when we put it out to bid, in a nutshell, the bids came back. I believe one was for about 380,000, and the other one was closer to 500.
It was over 5.
One was over 5. Yes.
So after opening that, it was clear that we did not have the money to do the renovation at the narrow station. At that point, the selectmen voted to not accept any of the bids, and it's clear that we cannot move forward with that project this year. And unfortunately, the way the warrant article was written is that at the end of the fiscal year, that money lapses back to the general fund. So it will not affect your tax rate because we didn't set the tax bill yet. We don't set the tax bill till the fall. So they're probably gonna just take that whole 200, what? Well, we don't set it till the fall.
I know you don't set it to the fall, but it's part of the budget that was approved, so
Yeah,
I'm pretty certain.
but if you got the 200,000, it's gonna go to surplus. Then you just use that and put that towards the tax rate, so it should have no impact on the tax rate.
That's a delicate juggling act. I'll talk to you later.
Well, it's delicate, but
It's the timing.
it's the, I'm not
But anyway,
argue about it, but if
no,
you don't spend the 200,000, it goes to surplus. You can argue that you can
Absolutely.
use that $200,000 to reduce the tax liability.
Yep, absolutely, you can.
Any further questions?
What needs to be done to the narrow station?
Basically, they have the plan. They just underestimated what they thought that was gonna.
Is there an addition or renovations to the building itself?
Oh, they're gonna add some sleeping quarters, put in some new bathrooms, showers. But basically, there is a plan if you'd like to look at the plan.
Okay.
We got a copy of the plan here. I mean, I'm not gonna bring it out now, but
We probably
It
do.
might be part of the election materials.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I'm
I
sure
mean,
we could
we'd be
find it.
happy, you know, if you wanna come down town hall, we get you able to get a look at the plan.
Okay, great, thank you.
I think Kate has one.
You know, and the whole idea of it was to move out of the ridge, because the ridge station is in dire need, desperate to, you know, to
Close
get
down
the
the
guys.
ridge and get
No,
everything.
no.
Not to close it down, but just to move the living quarters out of the
Got
ridge.
it, okay, that makes sense.
Right.
Hal?
Just maybe a general question, what might we be able to do in the next budgeting cycle to help folks avoid this problem? Because I've watched, you know, this is not an isolated case, here, at least here in this town.
Paul went through the same thing.
Yeah, and other towns too, but I mean, I watched a couple times the selectmen's meetings where folks from the rec committee had trouble estimating and coming up with exact costs for certain things that they wanted to do, as well as other committees and other groups. And I'm just wondering if the budget committee maybe has some general guidelines or maybe some requirements that we might want to put on requests. I mean, that said, you know, knowing that anybody can really petition anything.
Actually, at the last selectmen's meeting, so we have approximately $25,000 in an expendable trust fund. That's the selectmen or agents. Not formally, but they're doing a little background checking to see if we can hire a vendor, a contractor, or a consultant to do a study to actually, so we could get some real numbers. The second part of that is, again, I brought this up at the selectmen's meeting. We gotta work this out a little more, but I think I informally mentioned something to Kate and Glenn that they might start looking for some land on Route 4, because I think that the first thing we gotta do is find a piece of land.
Oh yeah, that has to do with, you know, what you're trying to do with the fire department or maybe a safety complex. But I'm asking a more general question. What can we do to help people avoid this
To
problem?
be honest with you, this is not the board's opinion, this is my opinion. So I'm not gonna say I'm talking for the board.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's clear to me that you're gonna need an appropriation. If you're gonna do the thing down the Narrows, so it's been a year, building's very good this year, we're gonna have to probably factor an inflation rate. I think that in order to do what they wanted to do in there, you're really talking about a $500,000 project, and that we need to go out to bond for that. We can't, I don't think we should put that all on one year. I think we should spread that over a multiple year to a bond.
Yeah, I guess I'm more concerned
But
though.
now I'm talking, do you even want to put that much money into the Narrows, or do we want to move ahead with the safety complex?
I guess my question isn't that. My
Okay.
question is, regardless of how you decide you're gonna move,
Yeah.
buy land, build something else, whatever, how do you avoid the problem of coming to the town and saying, we're gonna do something for $200,000 and then not being able to do it? I think that's the issue. I've watched this with a building down at the transfer station where somebody came in and said, we can put a building in here that's perfect for us for $100,000. Nope, we couldn't do that either. And this just repeats itself, and it's not fair to the people that are voting on these things to come in half-baked. And I think we either need to set some standards, or if they're not, I'm just going to start voting against them just on general principles. People need to get the message when they promise to do something for the town, they need to do it. And if you don't have the backup to show you can do it, then I don't think we should vote for it.
And I'm in total agreement with you. I thought about it. And for me, I would want to see plans. I would want to see
Bids.
exact costs based on what the prices are today. Obviously, there could be an inflation factor, which is minor in comparison to the total project, but I don't want to hear general ideas anymore. I want to hear, if we're talking about buildings, if we're talking about additions, I want a whole lot more specifics as opposed to just, yep, we can do it for this and that, and this is what we want to do.
Well, it
And
affects
just have it so vague.
Well, Scott's idea about having a consultant come in, and that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Doing that.
Well, we were gonna use, I'm sorry,
I mean, yeah, having a consultant come in and doing the legwork and saying, hey, you need
but I
all
think
this.
the money for that was set at that consultant's for a safety complex, not
Correct.
Okay, yeah, not just the,
fire
okay.
station.
Right.
And I think, to Hal's point, I even agree with you. I think what happened this year is unacceptable. I'm sorry it happened. I rely on department heads to give me data,
Well, we have to help them.
and
You know, some of that help has to be some standards, I think. Because all the stuff you talked about is good stuff, but if the foundation, which is the cost and the plans, is based on a slippery set of, a slippery slope.
But I constantly hear, I mean, and not me, but the politics in town, oh, don't, it's to hold the cart before the horse, the, chicken and egg thing. Well, first we need the land. Well, no, first we need a consultant to tell us who we want. I'm just saying, you hear these, this isn't just me saying, you hear this every day.
That's not my complaint, though. My complaint is the going out for something, telling the folks we're going to do something, and then not being able to do it. That's the other things. I don't know how you solve those, but I think there's some solutions to this problem.
We did do everything to the best of our intentions. We put it out to bid. We had a properly constructed bid document. The bids came back way over budget. I'm, as a member sitting on the board, if I come back and this is, geez, the town only gave me 200,000, these bids are coming back for 400,000, I think that makes it a dead issue.
It does.
I can't go forward with that.
Yeah, so there's disappointment all around.
What I think you said in talking about this was that the fire department developed two plans. One was more extravagant, and when they went from their, we'd really like to build this, and then somebody sat down and tried to figure out, well, how much would that cost? And they found out that that number was high. So they downsized the plan. And then they came up with this guesstimate of $200,000 to do it. And somewhere in that figure was an assumption that they were making, if I understood what you said correctly, that they were going to get a lot of volunteer help to do a whole lot of the work at, if not free, at greatly reduced costs. That's how we think we can build this for $200,000.
Correct.
And when the fire chief came in here with his plans and presented to us, and we all voted to, go forward with the project,
Never came to us and presented anything.
I thought we saw the plans, or was that at the
No.
deliberative
Well,
session?
That was
Deliberative
at the deliberative.
It was not here.
It was at deliberative session. He never came to the budget committee with those plans. He never came to the budget committee
Well,
to
maybe
talk
that
to
would
us
be a good
about it.
step to take, and to find out that, oh, by the way, we're assuming they're going to get $100,000 in in-kind contributions from our community of
Well,
firefighters.
that's all well and good. Can I respond?
Yes.
That's all well and good. But how do you address the issues of liability insurance, workers' comp?
Right. I mean, if all these people are working for free, then that brings with it a whole nother set of issues.
Yeah.
Even if
That's
they're
what
But
you're
what
doing.
I'm saying is,
Well, I
reality is, and we consulted with our attorney advised Unfortunately, this isn't 25 years ago. I'll be honest with you. 25 years ago, we could have went and say, Joe the plumber's gonna do the plumbing. I'm gonna get Frank to do the roof. That's not how business is done anymore in government. You have to put out a sealed bid, you gotta put out a bid, a RFP and a bid, and you take the bids. I would love to be able to do it the old way where it says, oh, this
Right,
guy's
but-
gonna do the
But
plumbing.
did they, in a sense, did the fire chief and his guys, mostly guys, know that that was
The case.
what they were?
Yes, I told him, he came in and suggested that to me and said, Nick, put in the money you think it's gonna cost to build and we're gonna put it out to bid. That's what he was told by the selectmen. Because he kept coming in, first time he came in it was gonna be 45,000. Next time he came in it was 80,000. I says, Nick, we're better off telling the voters what it's gonna cost to build and let the voters decide if it's a big number, let them vote it up or down. He said it's gonna be 200,000.
And you never knew that that number, which he had pulled out of his...
Well, I did know because I told them that we can't, we gotta put it out to bid. You can't, now,
So
I really don't wanna get, this is a long involved discussion that I don't think is appropriate to have at this meeting, but he was clearly told, tell us how much you think it's gonna cost to build, we need to put it out to bid, and make sure that you put an amount in there that's gonna cover the cost.
Well, I'm sorry this happened. I do see the need for improvements to that station.
Yes.
I understand the problem you're having with safety complex, improvements to the narrow station, how to finance it, what can we do with the resources we have. I agree with you that if you get that kind of number, that you getting a bond would probably be a better way to go than trying to do it all at one time. I was astonished, personally, that the voters would buy into that in the last election.
I actually was astonished too.
And I'm sorry it's happening because it simply sets back a year, if not forever,
Well, I think
making improvements that I think are
some
needed.
credibility issues where the voters are gonna be like, well, they told us they needed this and it was wrong.
They told us they needed this, and they told us they could do it for $200,000. They didn't tell us that, oh, by the way, we're gonna, get another $100,000 in in-kind contributions,
He was clearly told that you can't do that. That you don't. That's not done anymore.
Right.
It's not
Well,
done. Because if you go to transparency, and he was told this, but you can't say, well, we're gonna have two bids. He was like talking about doing like two bids and that, which is fine, but it's like. Basically, it wasn't gonna, my personal opinion in government for transparency, you put out a sealed bid and the people that want to do the job, I'm sorry, put out an RFP and the people that want to do the job give you a sealed bid back. And you open them up in public so everything is transparent.
Okay.
So I would presume in future, whichever way the selectmen decide to go, me personally, I think the complex is the best way, but that's just me.
I do too now.
Will have all of their I's dotted and T's crossed, and we'll have real firm plans and as firm as possible costs as of that time frame for the budget committee to consider when the appropriate time comes, if it comes.
I think we will ever need a subcommittee to dig into the details of some of these things that...
That is something that we can discuss when the time comes along that we have something presented to us. Budget committee can certainly do that if they...
I'll be honest with you, I think it's time to bring in a consultant, a professional, because
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know everybody professional background on this board, but I don't. Maybe we have an engineer, maybe we have a CPA, maybe we have a financial expert, investments and stuff. But if we don't, we need to hire somebody that can do that work.
Well, there is always a benefit of having somebody that's been through this multiple places, multiple times, because then you benefit from,
And I think that, you know, granted, I'll say guilty as charged. Hindsight's now, I wish we did get the consultant.
Grace?
I want to move beyond this particular issue and go back to what Hal said and make a case for, and I don't know whose job it would be because I haven't been involved in town government for quite some time,
Ages.
since I was on the school board many years ago. But it seems to me there should be some kind of policy and procedure in place around when there's a big project, estimates, or like you said, plans for safety complex or whatever. Anything. You gave several examples of people coming to the town and saying we can do it for this much, and then the number was way off. So how do we keep that from happening again? I just don't want to lose sight of that. I mean, we can get caught up in the particular projects that go poorly, but let's try to plan, whosever job that is, to keep it from happening in the future.
Seems to me that that's going to fall on the selectmen and or the school board, depending upon who's presenting what. But I think both representatives have heard us tonight discussing that, you know,
These numbers need to be based on something.
right, and that I, for one, and you all can decide for yourselves on the committee, I'm going to want to see a whole lot more detail and information before I vote yes on anything from now on, period.
Yep.
I don't know why, and I should have known better. I should have did it myself. I don't know why somebody didn't go to Barrington and said, how much did it cost to build your complex in 2008?
Exactly.
Right? And then
Adjust
take that number and adjust it for inflation.
Yeah.
Because we would have said, well, they built it for like, these aren't real numbers, but 5 million. They built it like what, 8 years ago?
At least.
So 5, you put in inflation rate and say, okay, we should probably budget 7 million. We're going to bond it for 20 years. But hindsight's 2020.
And we can use it as a learning experience. Instead of beating somebody over the head over it, let's just, you know, we just need to move on.
Yeah.
And I agreed 100% day one that a safety complex is the answer for this town. It's what everybody seems to be doing now because it just makes more sense.
Yeah.
You know, and you know.
We can keep putting repair money into the 3 public service buildings that we have,
Yep.
the 2 fire stations and the PD, and we're patching up, putting Band-Aids on, and
You know, and unfortunately, two of the buildings are just at the point now where it's gonna cost the town a lot of money if something happens, somebody gets hurt.
Right.
You know, we don't want that. We don't need that. So, and Hal, you do have some good points. We need something in place, like you said, going out, doing the research, doing the legwork, talking to other towns, see what they got and what they paid.
well, I just don't want to have problems getting something passed because
Right.
people just say, nope, we just don't know enough. Let's figure out how to get that. Because I've heard a lot of people say, we're just gonna vote no.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know?
And
I
I
can
think
drive a truck, but I don't know how to build one.
I think they've heard that
We need
tonight.
to help them.
Okay, do we have any other questions? We've got Scott on the hot seat. Any other questions, Lauren?
Ginger, I'd just like to, if I could, back to that, we have a purchasing policy. That anything over a certain level, they're supposed to have 3 quotes. So, I mean, it can stem
We
from
had
that.
to go out and get 3 quotes
Just
for a
not-
project of that magnitude though.
But I mean, we can base it on those kinds of things, get the research done, get what estimates you can. Like you said, go to Barrington, go to Nottingham.
Right.
So, I mean, there is something in place, we just need to kind of drive it in that direction.
Just, I know Bo finally got a to build this. I don't know if it's complete. I think it is completed. I'm not sure. Did Bo finish his yet?
I'm sorry.
Town of Bo went through a similar thing where they
Yeah.
literally went back to the town meeting like 5 or 6 times before they approved the complex.
Yeah, it took a long time, and I think
5
they
or
finally
6
got it
years.
blessed when
I think they finally got it like last year.
Yeah, they finally wrapped that up.
These,
But that took,
these big complexes,
Yeah.
you go multiple times.
Yeah.
Because truthfully, I think it's the sticker shock.
yeah, you know, and it's big money. It is, but it's big money that you got a plan that's gonna last you 40, 50 years down
Right.
the road, not what I need today, it's what I'm gonna need,
Right.
you know, down the road. So,
Okay, seeing as how we've We're done with the town, let's go on to the school. Your turn.
All right. All right, first things first, there's been some personnel changes on the board and at the SAU level. I'd just like to share. So Dave Ruth is now the school board member, filling out the remainder of Bree Gunter's term. As most of you know, she resigned when she moved to Vermont. At the SAU, we have a new business administrator named Robert O'Sullivan. The note from him, Bob O'Sullivan. It started July 1st. We have a new superintendent who was the former assistant superintendent, Scott Ruding. And Nate Byrne is the new, I'm not sure exactly what his title is, special education administrator, I believe. And he had been an assistant in that position before. So with that, they're closing out the books. I think his note said they're planning to be closed out within the next few weeks. He told me today, this is Bob O'Sullivan, told me today that they owe a report to the state by September 1st of all the books. So he said we're, maybe 98% of the way closed out, but there's still a few numbers that'll bounce around a little bit. We have a bit of a surplus, and we're intending to return quite a bit of that to the town, though we did go ahead and purchase from that a few of the things on the wish list from the school administrators. Also, some of the, particularly a lot of the technology things we purchased in the spring that ahead of the next fiscal year in order to get them into students' hands ahead of time. Let's see if I have any other notes. Oh, we've talked about it before, but the special ed budget numbers look a little funny because they're budgeted for the elementary school, but they were really intended for the high school, or maybe it was the other way around. So, so there's a bit of the numbers that balance out back and forth like that. And then other than that, I'm happy to try my best to answer anybody's questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The balance that I'm seeing for total elementary costs, is that the bottom line I should be looking at? There's elementary and then high school.
Right.
Yes.
I believe after high school there's a final grand total. That's the total. If I can find it.
Well, whatever balance, when I find it, does the balance that we're seeing right now reflect some of what you went ahead and bought some things off the wish list?
It does, yeah.
Okay, so this is the actual balance.
Yeah,
Pretty
within
much. Yeah,
maybe.
okay. So there's the total.
It's like the grand total is the bottom of page 13.
Yep, I just found it, thank you.
Al, you have a question?
Well, I did, in the note that came out from Bob, our new business administrator, he talked about savings on transportation. And what was how do we save that much money?
The biggest switch was we went from separate bus routes for Co-Brown to extended routes. So we had budgeted they had budgeted before I was on the board, for, I think it would be 8 routes. We had 6 town routes and then 2 Co-Brown routes, and now we're down to 6 routes, but 2 of those are extended routes, which is a lot cheaper. So the drivers who do the Co-Brown route then go into an elementary route after that.
I get you.
Extended route meaning it's just long.
Little generator.
Clean yourselves a little bit.
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. So they basically do 2 runs. They do the drivers who do the Co-Brown run then go into an elementary
Oh,
run.
and that's the extended run.
Yeah, that's why it's
Okay. Rather than a whole other bus and a whole other
right.
driver.
Previously,
Got
it had potentially been separate drivers and separate buses.
Yeah.
And it's a lot cheaper to pay for an extended route than to pay for an additional route. So,
Okay,
So can we continue that in future
yes,
years?
that is the plan.
great.
So, are we up for bids this year again, or not till?
It hasn't come up yet. As far as I know, we're not. But
Yeah, I don't remember either.
that hasn't. I know we have a bus company for this year. So.
Okay, good. Well, that's good.
In terms of budgeting, right?
Yeah.
We're not in the situation we were a year ago. in terms of budgeting ahead to the next year, I'm not sure if the bid's
Yeah,
good.
okay. But
how long it's good for.
we're sort of stabilized from a supplying the transportation basis.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is the bus that's parked in front of on Co-Brown's parking lot with a sign that says bus drivers needed, that's not for us, that's just in general, bus drivers are needed?
I believe that's just in general. We've heard nothing at the board of a need in our case. As far as I
Good.
know, we're all set.
Yeah, don't need to go through that
No.
again.
Yeah.
That was miserable.
Other questions?
Well, it's maybe again more of a general question, but on the special education, I know over the years there's been a fair amount of progress on the outside costs. Have we moved some of those internally now, that we handle those ourselves, or because I looked at the last thing that came out, which, you know, I can remember years ago it was like 800,000, 900,000 outside, and we're down to less than a, well, it's not talk like it's
Yeah,
little
it's-
money, it's less than $500,000, which we've made progress there, but I guess I have to ask, did we just find efficiencies, or have we decided to do some of it ourselves for more efficiency, better serving the children?
I think it's a couple of things. I know they've, at the SAU, they've put in a bit of effort on their services that they're offering to the, I forget what exactly the term is, but the students who are no longer able to go to Co-Brown to go there, that in the past had been maybe placed in other districts. They've been able to keep those in-house a bit. And so there's been some investment in the quality that they're able to provide down there. I know some of it too is just fluctuation of students. You know, individual students at times are incredibly pricey. And if, you know, some of the savings we're seeing in special ed this year are because of students who have moved away. I know that specifically. I don't know about how that compares to, you know, many years ago. But.
Ginger,
Yes.
would it break the form if I respond to a fire call?
No, I don't, well, I think we're all set if
We have
you
a
have to leave.
spare.
Thank you.
Spare.
As long as it's not down my end of town.
No, it's that.
That's the wrong way.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
In my house?
Be careful.
Thank you.
Yeah, just let me know.
I have another
Just
question.
enough. Just enough. Nobody else can leave until
Okay.
we're done.
I have another question.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And-
Absolutely.
On the
So,
suggestions,
This ends it, right?
I'm sorry?
If I want to take off, this ends it, right? Shouldn't be the adjourned point.
No, we're not doing it. Go ahead.
suggestions, this sheet, for use of surplus funds, and I assume this is giving us some information for the things that were bought with the surplus funds? It's from Dr.
Yep.
Godomsky. What's an AED?
It's a defibrillator.
Automatic electronic defibrillator.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay, thanks.
And what
Shocking
is
experience.
Infinite Campus?
Infinite Campus is the online, I believe it's the grading and attendance, a way to communicate with parents and keep track of records and whatnot. I believe.
Okay.
Other questions? I was looking through this financial statement and I found a number of lines that still show encumbrances as of July 31st, and I have some concerns about why they're still showing as encumbrances as opposed to having been paid.
Sure.
Any clue? I mean, these aren't the usual, we're waiting for the final electric bill or the final telephone bill. I mean, these are things that replacement of equipment, it's encumbered for $2,200. When was it ordered that it's still encumbered and not paid for?
There was a decision pretty late in the school year to order things on the last fiscal budget out of the surplus. And my best guess as to why things are still encumbered is they've been ordered, they haven't been delivered at this point.
It's going to be kind of hard to close out the books for the 1st of September if you're going into the second week of August and they're still encumbered.
What school board expenses have been encumbered but not paid for?
That was
it
another one I had.
a contractual obligation as opposed to a purchase order?
If you, I mean, can you give me a line and
Yeah, the
I'll see if I can get
school
that.
board.
Number or anything?
Isn't it fun trying to remember
I
all
know.
these lines? I remember. It wasn't fun. Services. Where the heck is this school board?
The school board expense one is page
Page
8.
8, down near the bottom.
Yeah, second from the bottom, or third from the bottom.
Yeah, I don't know. 24. So I get that for you.
Yeah, I think we'd all be kind of curious about what that is.
Maybe just address Ginger's general question, all the latent encumbrances, just so we have some sense what's happening there.
What Bob told me today is that a bunch of the things they've ordered, they have the purchase slips for, they're putting them on the books, but they're waiting to actually pay the bill because they need to close out the books for September 1st. So as things are coming in.
Ooh, wrong answer. Those things that were ordered have to be paid for out of 2017-18 budget, not 18-19 budget. If your business administrator is suggesting paying 17-18 bills out of 18-19 budget to get the report done for the 1st of September, that's...
Well, this is, I'm pretty sure that this is still the 17-18 budget.
This is, yes, but if he's not planning on paying these bills until after he closes out the books, then he's paying it with the next fiscal year's money.
Then perhaps I misunderstood what he said.
If we can clarify that,
Absolutely, yeah.
that just,
Yeah, 'cause that's pretty standard what Ginger said, so I would assume.
Yeah, it's probably, I mean, would imagine I'm misspeaking for him in that case, so I apologize. So.
no. If we can just find out,
Yeah, let's just clarify.
of course, by the time we meet again, it'll be
Send a note,
a done deal, but yeah, if,
even if it's just an email.
right, yeah, to let us know
Sure. I will do.
what the answer is. And that could actually be sent to Linda, and Linda can get it out to all
You
of
know-
us. Yes, Tom?
It was really helpful having Sandy here to field some of the detailed questions that Scott knew general answers to, but
Right.
she's the person who really knows the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had to do it over again, I'd have Bob here,
Yep,
just as she was here,
I agree.
because there are going to be questions that you know in general what they're
Right.
trying to do, but if you know, and our job is to oversee and try and understand, and not just simply to put you on the hot seat and make you look stupid.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So it'd be,
Although
so it'd
that
be
is the
nice.
fun part about
So it'd
it,
be
right?
nice.
You don't look stupid.
And you know, if you said to me,
That's just the benefit.
you know,
That's it.
well, we, we have to pay him overtime. I'd be happy to have you pay him overtime if that is what it takes to get, answers to questions like this, particularly at this point in time when it's, you have, 20 days to finish all this stuff up.
Yeah.
Heck, we promised him fresh garden produce. If it showed.
See, we're even bribing with food.
Uh,
Not necessarily the sweet stuff, but with food. Are there any other questions or comments or whatever?
Just a
Yes.
question on the monthly enrollment. Is this kind of what we budgeted for last year, or was this less students than, is that part of the reason we have money left over?
Some of the money left over is special ed students leaving that have then saved us money, and some on transportation too. I don't believe much of what's left over is because of a big exodus of students. I think the numbers have been pretty stable. I mean, they fluctuate a little bit, but
I don't remember the size of the class that,
The one number that fluctuates as a function of the number of students is co-brown
Co-Brown.
attendance.
Yeah.
yeah.
So the
That-
question is,
In the next few years, we're looking at smaller graduating 8th graders, groups of 8th graders going in. So we'll start to see that, but I don't think we're seeing that in this budget yet.
Did
Well,
you,
there
and
is
the other
some
question would be,
savings.
did you in the course of this year see more kids coming into the school district to go to Co-Brown? Or did those guesstimates of how many, we have a total that we're being, and who knows what on a daily basis what it was, but we were supposed to have 231 kids at Co-Brown. Is that number, did it start at 200 and creep up to 231, do you know, or did,
I don't know the answer.
Actually, it went down.
It went down.
We budgeted, I think when we budgeted last year for this, when we budgeted for this fiscal year, we were looking at 255 or somewhere in there.
Well,
It was up there quite a
the
bit.
Co-Brown line is 128 lower. Okay, so that's 8 students.
Yep,
So 8 students fewer in aggregate, because some come in, some leave, but
Right.
in aggregate, we're 8 fewer than we budgeted.
right.
good?
So, that's always which is why a few years ago, the school board decided to set up the expendable, or capital reserve fund, I guess it was, that money would be put into to cover those additional costs if we suddenly got an influx of high school students beyond what we had budgeted for, just as the school has the fund for additional special ed costs that weren't budgeted for. So that sort of covers it, so that we could be budgeting for
Exactly.
actual numbers, not, well, we've got 235 today, but we've got to plan on 5 extra. And then we ended up with 8 less than we budgeted for. So that was a way of kind of evening out the playing field a little bit. Any other questions? No? We done with the school budget? Okay, just a couple more things we gotta do, and then we can go out and play in the rain.
We'll have to start our generators, I think.
Yes.
I don't have a generator. Can I come to your house instead? Okay, so, we didn't see the 18-19 approved budget. Let me ask you this, Fran. When you guys went back after, probably you just did it in June, in determining the budget that was approved by the voters for the 18-19 fiscal year, in years past, there have been sometimes some adjustments and some movement or thinking that we can cover this because we're not going to be spending that much on that line. Has that been done yet?
No.
Okay. When that is done, and definitely for our October meeting, we're going to have a copy of it because we're going to have the financial
Right.
statement for it. So, is there anyone who would like that sent to them in advance of the financial statement? Just asking. It's not absolutely necessary for those of us who like to dig into numbers because we've got no life. You can get one. I wasn't looking at you, Betty, for that.
I don't know, she does seem to be looking right at me.
Yeah. That's because I know she'd take it from me, that's all. I'm not hearing anything from anybody that they particularly want to look at a bunch of numbers prior to our next meeting. Would that be fair to say? Okay. That being said, then we now need to look at our next meeting. I've checked with Linda to make sure that we were clear on the calendar. We're looking at October 17th, which is a Wednesday night. We have to make sure that the hall is going to be free for us, which it is that night. It'll be after Columbus Day and all that good stuff. So if everybody can mark their calendars accordingly.
7 p.m.
7 p.m. Yep. Our usual starting time.
Can someone tell me what Wednesday of the month that is?
Third.
Well, the Northwood Democrats will find another time to meet, possibly. Where?
Both of them?
Possibly they will, because we need you in
We'll
the
go
budget
on in my
committee meeting,
absence.
because we're also going to be discussing at that meeting the setup for the budget sessions. and we would like your opinion. So we're hoping that you can rearrange your other meetings to be able to attend.
What day was that? October?
October 17th. Because we can't do Tuesdays, we can't do Thursdays. That leaves us Wednesdays, and there's only so many Wednesdays that town hall is free. Let's see, the other thing that we need to do tonight, and the suggestion was made by Linda, and I think it's a great idea. The town is going to start working on their budget in a couple of weeks, which means they need our numbers prior to when we meet again. So the suggestion was that we just flatline our budget, and if we find that there are any kind of changes or whatever that we have to make, we could then make those adjustments at our October meeting. Otherwise, the selectmen would have our tiny 0.5% of the total budget so that they could say, yeah, those numbers are firm.
My only question would be, training always comes up. Did we spend, or are we generally okay on training?
We have training money in there. We had anticipated, what we were trying to do was get someone from the state to come in and do more of a tutorial and answer questions specific to our needs, here. And unfortunately, the timing didn't work out. They did not have availability because they were already booked up.
So that'll roll over, that money will roll over into...
Well, no, it won't roll over. It's just the same amount would be budgeted again.
No, the budget again, yeah.
Right. But there is the fall training. Occasionally, they do have fall training classes for budget committee members, for selectmen, for counselors, whatever. And I would encourage, once we hear when those dates are going to be, I would encourage us, whomever is free and available, to go. I mean, I'd like to go myself this year. It's been a couple of years since I've been. Just to get refreshed on any new changes that have been made, just as you go, I think, every year for the moderators.
Yeah, because you refresh and learn whatever's new.
And we have some new members as well, so I think I've always found it very beneficial because you have the opportunity to ask questions that are specific to our situation, whatever it may be. And a lot of times we hear the same questions asked by other towns. So I found it very helpful, and the food is always good. So there's always that.
Yeah, the food's good.
Yeah,
The food is always good. Yeah.
There is a way in which small towns like ours and larger towns and cities really go off into other areas, but a lot of it's pretty
A lot
basic
of it
and
is
covers.
pretty basic because they've set it up so that
The materials are really
specific items or specific budget committee members, for instance, would not be attending the same seminars that city councilors like Manchester or Concord that, they sort of present the budget and the mayor says yes or no.
Good to gear to the audience because there's only what, 15 city governments in the state anyway.
Yeah, and those go usually at the times to other
So you'll find when you go to this, almost everybody in this municipal, like a town government as opposed to us. City.
Right.
Did you say when that is?
We don't know yet. We don't have the dates yet.
It'll be in
but
the fall?
It'll be in the fall. Yeah.
Somebody will send an email or something about it?
Yep, Linda's very good about sending out emails to all the budget committee members saying, hey, guess what? This is going to happen on this date, and do you want to come? Let me know. And if we don't
We
let her
have
know,
money in the
then
budget to
we
send
don't
you
go.
for
I
lunch.
can't find the budget committee's line in the budget.
Oh, it's there. I put mine
in
away
there.
I
already.
think it's budget commission, is it?
No, it's budget
Well,
committee.
it's budget committee.
I guess, Ginger, to that point, I'll make a motion to level fund us for next
Page
year.
5.
Okay, we have page 5.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to level fund our budget committee budget. Questions, comments? You? Yes?
No.
Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody not voting? All right. So, Linda, if you can pass along, and Scott's here to hear it anyway.
I have another question.
Yes, sir, it would be.
Well, in our minutes that we okayed. We talked about a member vacancy and all the things that were supposed to happen to recruit a member. And I understand that one person has expressed interest in joining the budget committee, and I'm curious to know, are we going to further advertise vacancies, and if so, when? And then other question is, what are we going to do with the person who's stepped forward?
So the situation is this. The letter is written. I needed to wait until after this evening to find out when our next meeting was going to be so that I could actually put that in the letter. Added to the fact we now have 2 positions open, or 2 vacancies as opposed to just 1. Typically what we have always done is asked interested parties to submit a letter of interest and then come to our meeting to just let us know who you are and what have you, even though we have the letters. My understanding was the gentleman that had submitted a letter of interest was unable to be here this evening. And it just seems better he may be the only person we get. It's hard to say. The letter will go into the Suncook Sun and the Forum for the Wednesday after Labor Day. Not 2 days later, but like a week later. Which will allow enough time for people to get letters of interest if they are. Summertime is really difficult unless you happen to wrangle a neighbor or somebody you know and say, come on along. It's hard for people to know that there are vacancies. Now, it is posted on the town's website, which was something that we had discussed at the last meeting. The selectmen have included it in with their notices that we have 2 vacancies. So the electronic part and that posting part have been done since we last met. So it's just the letter going in. Betsy and I discussed it, and rather than putting the letter in twice or stretching my mental capabilities to write a second one, because the first one, you don't want to just put the same one in twice, we decided to wait until after the summer was over so that we can hopefully get 2 people appointed at our next meeting on October 17th.
Did a budget committee member leave?
Well, he got elected to the school board and left, and then there was another vacancy when Bree Gunter moved out of town, and Dave decided he wanted to go back on the school board more than
And
he
he
wanted
was
to be
on the budget committee.
He was on budget committee.
Right.
So that's why we ended up with the 2
Got
vacancies.
it, okay.
2 defected to the school board.
Yeah.
Dave got it
Yeah.
further out than I did.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, do we have any other questions? Don't think we've got any unfinished business. We covered everything, right, Linda? We got our operating budget, such as it is. And all done. Then in that case,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
with a motion and a second, I'm assuming no discussion, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You can clean the table.